It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Every month we review the latest parenting news. It's called This Week in Parenting. This Week in Parenting. Hello, I'm Dr. Justin Coulson. I'm here with my wife and mum to our 6 daughters, Mrs. Happy Families, Kylie Coulson. Kylie, normally we try to rush through 5 big stories in 15 minutes. Not going to happen today. Number 1, hasn't been a whole lot of parenting news. Number 2, 2 really big stories. We've got one about ongoing discussions around social media bans for kids and some recent research about smacking in Australia. Where should we start? You sound like you don't want to do This Week in Parenting. This is my favourite episode. I mean, I just have so much fun with this one. What's the matter? What's the matter?
I honestly, I can't believe we're still having conversations about smacking.
Oh, yeah, it is a bit depressing, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. To think that at this stage of understanding and progression as a society, there is still a debate about whether or not I should be able to smack my kid.
And so where do you stand on this?
I wasn't expecting you to ask me that question.
Right.
I don't think it's actually relevant whether I have an opinion about it or not. But the research is really clear.
Yeah.
There is nothing positive that comes from smacking our kids.
A new study has revealed that Australians are more open to smacking their children compared to parents in other high-income countries. Just over 50% of Aussie parents admitting to using corporal punishment at least once.
Let's have a look at what the study showed. Australian parents are more open to smacking their kids than parents in other high-income countries.
Did they tell us why?
Well, let's have a look at it. Dr. Carolina Gonzalez led the study comparing Australian attitudes to those found in Belgium, Canada, Germany, Hong Kong, Spain, Switzerland, and the UK. Notice which major country is not there.
China.
Well, China's not there either. Hard to do research in China. The USA. The USA was not there either. We know that the USA is highly pro-smacking. It's like gun rights and smacking rights. We should be allowed to do whatever we want. And Australian parents, though, in the countries that were examined, reported the highest level of acceptability of corporal punishment of children, which is really odd because I mean, for years, I've been making noise that we need to ban smacking, make it illegal, draw a line in the sand and just say, this is something that we don't do here anymore. When you draw that line in the sand and provide appropriate education and support for parents who are struggling, what happens is over a handful of years, changes occur. So I'm all for the ban. I'm all for making it illegal. I think that it's absolutely the right thing to do, not if it means that we start to punish parents and fine them and imprison them. That's not helpful, but rather because it draws that line and then we provide the relevant education. What the study showed, by the way, 6,700 parents of children aged 2 to 12, 62.5% of Aussie adults had experienced corporal punishment 3 times or more before they turned 18. I'm surprised that it's that low. And 53.7% of Australian parents had used corporal punishment at least once. Again, I'm surprised that it's that low. I would have thought it's higher, especially based on the conversations that I have with parents every single day. Basically, the reasons for it, Australia's a really individualistic country, and there's a real push that I should be allowed to do what I think is right without anybody telling me what to do. We don't have that collectivist culture. And in addition to that, when we look historically, it's something that's always happened in Australia. It's just what we've done here. You know what is really interesting about this study? Of the 8 countries that were examined, only Germany and Spain have banned smacking, banned corporal punishment completely. So a handful of others have banned it in separate settings, but very much Germany and Spain. In the study, check this out. This is really interesting, though, on my argument for the ban. In Germany and Spain, parents did not consistently show less acceptance and use of corporal punishment and other similar strategies. So, even though,
but how long's the ban been in for?
I don't know how long they've had it banned for. I would assume, I mean, we've got 63 countries, I think it is now, around the world that have banned smacking. Most of them have only done it fairly recently. Some did it a long time ago, but they were absolutely like real world leaders in that particular area.
I think back to the conversations we've had recently on the podcast about seatbelt laws and how long it took for a systematic change to take place across nations.
It's a generational thing.
It really is.
Yeah.
So the fact that there isn't necessarily a shift in mentality at this point isn't a suggestion that it's the wrong move. It's just an acknowledgement that these things really do take time.
Yeah. Let me be really clear. For those who have maybe missed the conversations we've had previously in like 60 seconds or less, morally, I think we've got really big problems when it comes to this idea that it's okay to hit kids. Just the moral argument doesn't stack up. How is it right that a person who's twice your height and 5 times your weight is allowed to give you a whack? If a 3.5 metre tall, 350 kilogram person, adult, came and stood beside me and threatened to hit me, I'd probably wet my pants. Like, just
and even a tap.
Oh, yeah.
Would feel like an assault on me.
It would be terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And that's what happens, especially when you're hitting toddlers. And the younger the child, the more likely it is that they'll get hit. As kids get older, they get hit by their parents a lot less. A lot of parents will say, well, you can't reason. You just can't reason with a toddler. My argument against that is, well, you can't reason with a dementia patient either. So should we start hitting 80-year-olds? I mean, it's just nuts. It doesn't stand up.
Every time we have this conversation, I just feel so frustrated. Why would I want my child to be scared of me? Why would I want them to fear me? If everything I am doing is about building a loving, safe environment and a connective relationship with my child, why would I go out of my way to jeopardize all of the good that I'm doing everywhere else?
Yeah, and research. I mean, we've talked about the moral and philosophical side of things, but from a research point of view, it doesn't stack up. We've got 60 years of smacking research now. This is not abuse. This is not hardcore violence towards children. We're just talking about smacking. In America, they'd call it spanking. 50, 60 years of research now shows that there are no redeeming qualities, except that you might sometimes get a short-term response where you get the behavior that you're looking for, but it doesn't last. It is problematic, and there are just better things to do. The biggest issue is we've got to educate parents on better things to do. I've written a couple of books about this sort of stuff. Parenting Revolution. Grab a copy of The Parenting Revolution if you want to know what to do instead of hitting your kids. There's just so much there. So that's our first story. We've got a problem with the culture. The good news is the numbers are improving. The numbers are definitely trending in the right direction. And more, I'm speaking with parents who are trying so hard to be gentle and kind and compassionate with their kids while still having limits where necessary. So that's a good sign, but there's still a lot of work to do. Story number 2.
Opening the door to an Australian first that will shut off social media to SA children.
A very significant and ambitious move to limit the harm of social media on our children.
Social media bans. This continues to be a conversation piece.
The momentum is building. The momentum is really, really building, and I'm so excited about it. I'm really happy about what we're doing here. We are taking a slightly different route to some others. So there's a guy called Whipper. He's on the radio in Sydney. Some people would know who he is. He's been around for a pretty long time now. 36 months. 36 months is what Michael Whipper, and Rob Gluso, the founder of the production company Finch, are arguing. They're saying, let's raise the minimum age that Australian teenagers can sign up for social media accounts from 13 to 16. Let's do that. Buy them an additional 36 months of cognitive development, intellectual development, psychological development, social development, emotional development. Let's keep them away from all of the awful stuff that happens. I mean, the amount of explicit material, the amount of unsolicited, non-consensual nudes, the bullying, the rubbish that goes around on social media, working really hard with politicians, working really hard with movers and shakers to get some legislation over the line to protect our kids aged 13 to 16. Everyone's talking about it. It's a really big deal. And more, politicians are starting to get behind it. I think politicians have taken a sniff of the air and said, this could be a vote winner. This works. We've got parents who are really worried about it. Maybe that's a bit cynical of me, but I think that they're getting the message and they're heading in that direction. I fully support what they're doing.
I really love the concept. And just, thinking about 36 months, it just made me think about the wrestle we've had as parents about whether or not to start our children at school at earlier ages. We've gone both ways. We've had a child go in very early because of her birthday cutoff, and then recognised with time that probably wasn't the best option, and so we we held our other daughter back from starting school, and she got to enjoy
an extra 12 months of childhood.
And it really made such a difference.
Right.
And when I see that and marry that up with what we're talking about here and giving our children, our preteens and early teens, another chance to just be kids for a little bit longer, I applaud them for even trying.
So the groundswell is heading in this direction. Here's some really interesting research. Some studies were done a few years ago highlighting that if you want to create social change, you've got to get 25% of the population behind you. Once you've got 25%, that's the tipping point, and that's when the momentum really starts to flow. I believe that the momentum is there. The momentum is shifting and it's really strong. And that's why politicians are getting behind it. Earlier this year, we had Julie Inman Grant on. She's the e-safety commissioner. And we were talking about how the federal government had refused last year her recommendation for age verification technology to keep kids away from explicit content online. They just said, no, we're not going to do it. She just was suggesting a pilot, just a trial. Let's see if we can get it going. Federal government said no. They've backflipped on that now. Hallelujah. And they've said they're going to do that. Why? Because the public are begging. The public are begging for protection for kids. What Whipper's trying to do here, I love it. Now, I'm going to be a little bit of I'm going to poo-poo it a little bit as well, though. The problem is, I don't think we can wait for legislation. It's going to take a long time. Doing it state by state won't work. It's got to be federal. It has to happen at the Commonwealth level. If it happens at the state level, there's just going to be too much inconsistency and that will cause problems. At the federal level, Australia is in so many ways kind of at the whim or mercy of what America does. As America goes, so goes the rest of the world. However, it's possible that we could create the age verification technologies, but by the time this stuff gets legislated and then the technologies are developed and implemented, oh my goodness, not to mention if the companies like Meta decide to challenge it in court, this could be a 3, 4, 5, 8, 10-year process. And frankly, I don't think we've got that much time. So there's a lot of reasons why this might not work. The top-down approach is always problematic as well, because if people don't like it, they won't get behind it and they'll rebel against it, and we have those issues.
But I think what you're seeing, especially as you go into communities, is parents they're begging for it. They're begging for somebody else to kind of create the safe playground for their kids.
Right.
We, as parents, you talk about peer pressure for kids, but as adults, we feel it too.
So much.
It's so intense. And when you feel like you're the only parent in the whole wide world who's stopping your kids from joining in, it can be really, really, really hard. And for most of us, we struggle to make that stand because we fear that our kids are going to miss out.
Quick story. This year, I reckon I've done about 130 presentations already. It's been such a busy year for me traveling, giving presentations, corporates, keynotes, whatever, schools. But I was in a school and a mum put up a hand and said, I've got this issue where my child keeps telling me that she's the only one that doesn't have social media and a smartphone. And I said, how old's your child? She said 12. I said to everyone in the room, can you please put up your hand if your children are 12 and don't have social media and a smartphone? About 60% of hands went up. And I said, she's lying. Kids have got so much energy for this, like they want it so badly.
Yeah.
And that's why we're doing so much with this. Can we really unplug childhood? Here's what I want to emphasize. If we can delay by committing to keeping smartphones and social media out of primary school and giving our children a play-based childhood, we're already setting ourselves up for more success. And this is a bottom-up approach. We don't have to wait for the politicians. We can do this now. If we can build a community so that mum can look around and say, all of these other parents are doing the same thing, but my kids are socially isolated, so let me use the platforms that as an adult I'm old enough to use to coordinate what's necessary for my kids to have the community around them and to have the social exposure and engagement and involvement that they need. That works. Let's stick together and create the village again. And then when the time comes, number 3, go slow. When the time comes that you want your child to have a phone for safety reasons, start with a dumb phone, because kids don't need smartphones. They need smart parents, and smart parents give their kids dumb phones. Have the conversation about social media slowly. That, to me, if Whipper and I could combine forces, and he's got the top-down focus with the politicians and the legislation, which will take a few years, and in the meantime, we just focus on what we already know. Kids don't need smartphones, and they don't need social media, and we all band together and make this work. It can actually happen. Oh, by the way, I've created a website. I don't know if you knew that. I've created a website to help with this. We'll link to the website in the show notes. We're going to be talking about it on the podcast nonstop. There's just so much that we can do to help our kids feel better about life and be safe. And that's what I want to emphasize. That's really what I want to emphasize.
I've shared recently that I downloaded Snapchat so that I could stay in touch with some of the youth that I'm working with at the moment. I've actually been so happily surprised at how many don't have it. And I just applaud parents who are willing to be the baddie in their kids' worlds in an effort to protect them.
So we will link to both our website to get your grassroots involvement, as well as what WIP is doing with 36 months. We'll link to that in the show notes. I have some reservations about whether or not we can make it work, but gee, I really, really hope we can. I think that the momentum is there and we can make this happen. Hope you've enjoyed this week in Parenting Today. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Ruan from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. More information is available on making your family happier at happyfamilies.com.au.